Alright, Chapter 13, Video 2. He heard the bubbling intake of breath again. The creature was less than 3 feet from him. The spent breath was warm on Bentley's face and sour with the stench of vomit. His heart thumping, Bentley clenched his teeth and drew back. He pressed his lips together to keep himself from yelling in incoherent fear and slid along the wall on his rear end. The hoarse breathing was just as loud, but the stink was fainter. He got to his feet fast, looking up at the window on the opposite wall, calculating the run and the sprint up the wall that would get him a grip on the sill. "Well, let's see," said a man's voice outside, speaking as if to himself. "Let's have a look here, kid. Maybe you got yourself into a church." Bentley was about to screech for help. In his swarming mind he realized that his mother would hear him yelling like a baby. His heart was pounding so hard that it pulsed against his eardrums. He wiped his brow. He saw a pair of legs appear in the square frame of moonlight. The man outside began to squat. Bentley moved a foot to his right, groping frantically with his hand. His knuckles cracked on something, and he had to swallow a cry of pain. He groped again. He'd hit a board fixed into the wall. He lifted his hand. There was another board above it. Stairs. He could see the searcher's head and shoulders silhouetted against the pale moonlight. The flashlight blazed for a moment. Bentley grabbed the stairs and swung himself around so that he was facing them. Prince Ombra watched. The flashlight's beam spread on the cellar wall and moved toward the place where Bentley was standing. Thoughts of rescue from the creature slobbering in the dark tossed for a second in his brain. Then he thought of being brave for his mother. He scrambled up the stairs on all fours. His head butted into a door at the top. It swung open, and he sprawled, exhausted and half-numb with dread, onto the church floor. Prince Ombra contracted his incorporeal persona. Intangible, he filled the dim, dry interior of the church. Bentley lay on the floor trying to calm himself. He thought of the man with the flashlight outside. That man was real. He was somebody who was trying to rescue Bentley. But he had no idea what terrible things he was rescuing Bentley from. Bentley felt something tickling his neck. He was re-electrified into a frenzy by the idea of a spider crawling on him. He grabbed his collar and felt something squish between his fingers. He sat up, yanked off his shirt, and flapped it frantically in the air. He sat panting on the floor, holding his rumpled shirt in his hands, and decided to give up. He was sitting on a side of the church near the altar. He could see part way down the cavernous length of the hall. Weak light was coming through the tall windows. It glowed dimly on the backs of the pews. Everything smelled of dust and ghosts. Bentley heard a car door slam. He jumped up, struggled into his shirt, and ran down the center aisle of the church. The car's engine started and roared twice. "Wait!" Bentley yelled. "Hey, you guys, wait!" He ran to the tall front doors of the church. He could see a slit of light between them. He pounded on the doors. "It's me!" he shouted. "I'm in here! Wait!" He was still beating with both fists, the doors giving a little under the pressure, when he heard the car drive away. He stopped pounding. He turned around. The church stretched before him, its shapes in shadow. High above him, among the eaves, he heard a brief, dry twitter of bat wings. Bentley sat down on a pew. A silver moonbeam lay on the dust-covered wood beside him. He was lonely and frightened. He felt his heart bumping in his chest. His mind wasn't frantic any longer. It was filled with one hopeless realization. He didn't know how to get out of the church except through the cellar. The windows were too high for him to climb up to, even if he broke one of them. The doors were locked, and he wasn't going back to that cellar for anything. What was down there was probably going to come up where he was. He tried to pretend that his mother was sitting beside him. He didn't want her worrying that he couldn't take care of himself. "I'll get a stick somewhere," he said. "See, it can't get at me because of my circles and stuff." He knew that wasn't true, because the creature in the basement was real, not an idea or magic. "So," he said, his voice trailing off, as the pretend of his mother disintegrated, "I'll get a stick and hit it when it comes up here." The dark nimbus of Lord Ombra stood between Bentley and his mother's presence. He looked around the church. People had locked it up a long time before and walked away from it. Bentley wondered if God was sore about that. The chamber that towered above him seemed filled with mute resentment. Something clattered at the bottom of the basement stairs. Bentley jumped. Rockets of panic arced through his brain. He heard the something mumbling. Then it barked. Bentley skidded along the pew, pushing a pile of dust before him. He dropped into the shadows of the wall aisle and put his hands over his face. He crouched like that for 10 seconds. Then he opened his eyes behind his hands. The mumbling, self-absorbed sounds of the beast came from the cellar stairs. Bentley spread his fingers slightly and saw orange light. He lowered his hands. His eyes widened. The light was getting brighter, flickering on the dusty walls and the black placard that held white numbers announcing the last hymns ever sung in the church. Bentley heard a new and terrible singing. 2 sputtering fistfuls of flame emerged from the cellar door. Bentley ducked and put his hands over his face again. He tried to flee into himself because he had no place else to go. He heard staccato nasal singing, as if a great bird were chanting through its resonant beak. The singing turned into a croak, a gargle, as if the singer were strangling on his song. It wasn't a bird of some hideous breed. The voice was human.